a little blurry here. I got the eagle in the background kind of giving us a glare, but maybe.
Unmute. Now you should hear me.
Okay, I got
There
you
you
now,
go.
brother. It's great to connect with you, Lenny.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah. Well, welcome.
you.
Welcome everybody to Faith, Family, and Friends. Going to give you the official formal welcome to our good friend Lenny LeBlanc, CCM artist, background vocalist, bass guitarist, and a session player from way back. We'll get into the different people that he has sung with, and the songs that he's written through the years. Like we do with a lot of our CCM artists, Lenny. Before I forget to, I just want to thank you for all your music through the years, and particularly with Hosanna and Integrity. Like I say, I share this with CCM groups and people that we've had. We were just on with Gary Chapman. A big reason how I grew up in the Lord was music. It mentored me. The songs that you guys wrote and sang for the Lord, and that went all the radio stations and the albums that we had. I was saved when I was young, teenager. It just helped me grow in the Lord. And I just want to thank you personally for your contribution to the kingdom of God. And I don't know that anybody's ever thanked you that your music has helped disciple them, but it did. It did. So yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem. So just let's go back to some of the musical influences. Well, you grew up. I found out that you were born in Leominster, Mass.
Yeah.
Fellow New Englander. I'm
He's
from
from
Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I live in Alabama, so I try not to tell my friends I'm a Yankee.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, you don't do that.
You could get in trouble.
Yeah, I remember.
I keep that under the cuff, you know.
I bet you do. I remember running.
But we moved.
Go ahead. Yeah.
We moved when I was 4 years old, so I don't remember a
Awesome.
whole lot about it. And we settled in Daytona Beach.
Okay. That's
And
a good place. Yeah.
yeah,
Warmer there. Much warmer.
yeah, it's a lot warmer.
Yeah.
So how did you, what were your influences growing up spiritually? And maybe we'll just start off musically. What was on the radio? What was on the phonograph? What were your family members listening to? What were you listening to? Top 40?
Well, we grew up in Daytona, like I said, and we went to a Catholic school, and I know we were probably going on a scholarship because my dad was a bag boy and my mom was a waitress, and I know they couldn't afford it. So I think we were charity cases. And so up until 7th grade, then I went to public school, and I got into surfing.
Really?
Because surfing's really big down there, you know. And then I went to a friend's house from the beach one day, and his brother and his couple of his buddies were sitting around the living room, and they were playing electric guitars, and they looked at my friend and I and said, "Hey, why don't one of y'all come over here and sing?" We thought, sing? We're surfers, not singers. You know, and I kept listening, and I knew the songs, they were on the radio, so I went over there and picked up the sheet music and I started singing. And they looked at me and they said, "Wow, you sound good." I said, "Really?"
Really?
Said, "Yeah, well, let's put a band together and enter the talent show at junior high." I thought, talent show? You think I've got talent? I said, "Yeah." So I was in that talent show, and I had my hands in my pockets and my back to the audience. I'd never been in front of anybody doing anything.
Junior high, it's tough to start out.
Yeah, and we won.
Wow.
We won the contest. Then they got really excited. They said, "You need to get a bass." I said, "What's a bass?"
Wow.
You know, I had no idea. I had no musical upbringing or you know any of that. And so I went to Eggers Drugstore and got a job washing dishes and saved my money and bought a bass.
There you go.
Then you know, about a year later, I was making a living in the clubs.
Yeah.
Playing, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
And my influences early on were the Allman Brothers, because Greg and Dwayne Allman grew up in Daytona Beach.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they went to Seabreeze High School, and they were about 3 years ahead of me.
Yeah.
But we always looked up to them, and we would go see them, you know, and later became friends with them. But those were my earlier influences. I had all black blues records. I had B.B. King records.
Oh, cool.
Paul Butterfield records, and John Mayall.
Yeah.
And all those kind of records. I love Taj Mahal. I love all those black blues records.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. And so when did you first put your hands on a guitar? About that time, and it was the bass, other than acoustic or steel.
Well, I was playing bass and the lead singer in the band.
Yeah.
And then I moved to Cincinnati, and I was kind of learning guitar along the way. And then after about 3 years in Cincinnati, I really didn't like the style of music, the band I was in, and so I called Greg Allman. And he was actually, I saw him in Cincinnati at a concert, and we hung out together the rest of the night. And
Mhm.
he invited me to Macon, and he had just recorded his solo album, Laid Back.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to put a tour together. And he
Uh-huh.
said, you can come on the road with me and be my bass player.
Wow.
So I got all excited, and I moved to Macon.
Yeah.
And I had a young family, and my wife was an LPN. She worked at the hospital there, and I stayed home with our 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And a funny story is Greg came to get me one day, and we came into town, and we're looking for a place to rent, and we saw this house, and it was a half of a floor of the bottom floor of this big
Uh-huh.
old house.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So we rented it, and Greg came in, and he looked around, and he said, I'll wait for you in the car.
Mm.
And I didn't know it, but that was the big house that they've
Yeah.
all lived in.
Wow.
And now it's the Allman Brothers
Yeah.
Museum.
Yeah.
You know,
And
it's
make it.
museum.
But it was just so
Wow.
weird that we looked in the paper and found that house.
Yeah, that is
Wow.
So
kind of
3 months went by, and Greg was not in a hurry to put a band together, and
Yeah.
I had to do something. So I called my friend Pete Carr,
Mm-hmm.
who was here in Muscle Shoals, already established
Yeah.
Mhm.
as a big session player. And I said, do you think
Mhm.
there's anything for me up there? And he said, yeah, come on up for a week and check it out.
Uh-huh.
And that was 1973, and I never looked back.
That's
Yeah.
crazy. Wow. And you and Pete had gotten together. Was it after that, the incident with the
Yeah,
almond, and you did the hit
yeah,
Falling?
yeah. I did one
Yeah.
solo record on Atlantic before that
Okay.
Okay.
that
Yeah.
Pete produced. It was kind
Yeah.
of a solo adventure.
Yep.
And then he was doing instrumental records for Atlantic Records also,
Yeah.
and it was the Red Label's idea actually to team us up together
Right. Wow.
Wow.
And
for
so
LeBlanc and Carr. Yeah,
Yeah.
that song, how did that come to be? Can you, because I just love the background of how songs come to be, how they are crafted, the idea, the epiphany or inspiration. What's the story behind that particular song? And it was a slow
well,
hit to come because I think
yeah.
I've heard you share, I've read where it, didn't really hit the top 40 quite right away, but it just sort of like a cult following. So yeah, maybe you could
It stayed
describe
in the
that.
chart for 27 weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
It took forever to get there, but it was a
Yep.
lot bigger record than it actually appeared in the chart
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it was there so long. It
Uh-huh.
went million performance in about 2 years,
That's crazy.
Wow.
which
Wow.
there's very, very few songs that reach that status, that
Uh-huh.
early.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
yeah, my
Yeah.
roommate at the time, Eddie Struzek, who's now in heaven,
Uh-huh.
he had the first couple lines of the song.
Okay.
And as soon as he played me those first 2 lines, I heard the chorus in my head.
Wow.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I love
It was just, I don't know, it's just hard to explain how it
Yeah.
happens. It's just,
Yeah.
it's something you can't teach people.
Yeah.
No.
Right.
There's a certain part of it that is a craft and you can
Yes.
hone it,
Right.
but
It's also a
there's
gift.
Yeah. It's a
yeah,
gift.
it's a gift. It really is.
Yeah. We've talked to a number of CCM artists and people, and it's a little of both. They typically
Mhm.
say. Dallas
Yep.
Holm told us about I Saw the Lord. That was like a straight, quick hit. He got everything.
Yeah.
But then other
In like
times
15
it's
minutes,
slow.
he had it.
And
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
so
I've worked on some songs for 2 years.
wow, that's crazy.
Just kind of,
Wow.
I just,
Yeah.
work on them, get them out of the drawer, put them back in the drawer, put them in the freezer for a while.
Well, that's awesome.
That burns
So you continue to kind of take us along that journey, and if you can, bring us up to where you made a profession of faith and how things changed. And many of the songs that I'm more familiar with, working Christian radio from Maine to Massachusetts and Missouri,
Mhm.
spending some of those records. And as we've been kind of getting ready for our interview this week, we've been listening to some of those songs, and tears are flowing. And just
Yeah.
remember
remembering
the song and just how you feel with the Lord with that particular single. But so you with Pete for a while, then I know that
Yep.
he got done and kind of did more of the recording or producing of records, and you still
Yep.
toured under
Yeah.
Carter and LeBlanc, but it was just you.
We
And
had the same manager as the Rolling
Mhm.
Stones and Leonard Skinner, so
okay,
we got put on the Leonard Skinner tour,
okay,
the last tour they did, and we did
Yeah.
5 shows and the plane crashed.
wow,
And Pete decided he wanted to stay home and just produce. He was just kind of he wasn't into going on the road, so that was kind of awkward for me.
right,
But I did a bunch of TV. We did Dinosaur and Merv Griffin and the
Uh-huh.
Midnight Special and all that stuff during
Yeah.
the day.
yeah,
And so when I came back, I signed a solo record deal with Capitol,
Mhm.
MSS Capitol here,
yeah,
and did one solo record. And then they exercised my option, which means they want to do a second album on you.
Mhm.
And during that, right before that process, a drug smuggler friend of mine from Daytona that'd been to Vietnam
Mm.
had come home, and he had been smuggling drugs, but from the islands.
Wow.
they were huge smugglers.
Yeah.
They had boats and planes, and they were big time.
Wow.
Organized. Yeah.
Wow.
And he called me late one night and he said, Lenny, I got saved
Mm.
and I'm going to heaven and I want you to be there with me. Are you saved? And
Wow.
I
That blow
thought,
you
man,
away? That just had to, I mean, with no
So-
background in religion or
oh
church.
no,
What happened to him?
I hadn't been to a church in probably 20 years. I didn't know anything spiritual. You know, I had no spiritual foundation. And I
Wow.
thought, oh man, just when things are going good,
Mhm.
I would,
Yeah.
God was the last thing on my radar.
Right.
I was having success as a
Sure.
songwriter and
Yep.
musician and
Right.
touring, and
Mhm.
everything was going great career wise.
Yep.
Mhm.
But something in his voice really just struck me, and I knew something profound had happened to him
Wow.
because he was like a brother to me. He was really close
Yeah.
to me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm gonna send you some books. I said, okay,
Okay.
cool. So he sends me a Bible and he sends me this little book about the end times,
Uh-huh.
and that scared the crap out of me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big emphasis back then. There was. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, it was right about the late great planet Earth too. That was about
Yeah.
6 months
Hal
before.
Lindsey. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I started reading
Yeah.
that book, and I started reading the Bible,
Mm,
and God began to reveal Himself to me.
mm. Yeah.
He began to reveal His love to me, and He just showed me how empty I was, how bankrupt I was spiritually. I'd left my
Yeah.
family, but 6 years before for my career. My career was my God.
Mm.
I worshiped the gift that God gave me, and
Wow.
I just started seeing myself for who I was, and how I
Mhm.
needed Him. And I just started crying out to Him for forgiveness. And I would read that book, that other little book, and it had about 18 chapters. And after every chapter,
Yeah.
it had what you'd call the sinner's prayer,
Uh-huh.
to ask
Yeah.
God to come
Yeah.
into your heart and change your
Yeah.
life,
Yeah.
and I'd get down on my knees about 18 times that week because I didn't know what I was supposed to feel. I
Yeah.
thought, well,
Yeah.
maybe I'm supposed to get a big light come in the room or an angel or
Yeah.
something,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was totally ignorant,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, the power of God came in my
Yeah.
house and
Wow.
I was ruined.
Yeah.
I would go out on the front porch and the trees looked greener. I said, those trees have never looked that green.
Yeah.
My
Crazy.
friends would come over and they say, come on, man, let's go to the club. I said, man, if I get any higher, I don't know what I'll do.
Yeah. That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
they thought I was losing my mind. My
Yeah.
friends did.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
Wow.
And so then I was in this contract with that record company and I was trying to write songs for that next record.
Mhm.
So I'd start out, write a pop song, and by the time we got to the chorus, it'd be about Jesus.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And I said, well, I
Wow.
said, Jesus, Capitol's not going to want these Jesus songs.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And they
probably
didn't.
didn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And they didn't. And I called my manager in LA. I said, do you think they let me out of that contract?
Mhm.
And he said, do you realize what you're saying? I said,
Yeah.
people give their right arm to be where you're at.
Yeah.
I said, well, and it wasn't that, okay, now you're a Jesus boy and you can't
Right.
do these
Yeah.
pop
They
songs.
couldn't have.
It wasn't that at all.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
none of that.
Yeah.
I just lost all the desire to do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I wanted to do was write songs about this God that changed my life.
That's incredible.
That was my focus.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
of course, it was a great life decision, but it was a terrible career move because
Oh,
my
yeah.
income went to zero.
Uh,
I had
bet. Yeah.
I had a record advance and I had songwriting deal,
Uh-huh.
where I was getting a draw every week for writing songs, or
Yeah.
that went
Yeah.
away. It all
Yeah.
went away and they put me in suspension of my contract, which is legally what they do.
Yeah.
And you can't record for anyone else until they buy your contract.
So the buy your out. Wow.
So it took 2
Uh-huh.
years. It took 2 years before I could do anything.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Wow.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So, but God was faithful. I never missed
He
a
is.
bill.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd sell a guitar here and there and sold my truck for a while. I was riding a bike.
Whatever you have to do, right?
Isn't that incredible? And so how did
Uh,
the Lord begin to open doors to Christian music for you after that? And that
Well, I started in our church,
Yep.
the piano player quit one day and she said, Lenny, will you play piano? And I had a piano in my room, but I rarely played it. So I really
Mhm.
wasn't a piano player. So
Yeah.
I learned to play piano in church.
Wow.
Wow.
And thankfully the songs were pretty simple,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I met different people. I saw an ad in CCM magazine for Heartland Records, this little label in Orlando.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
Heartland
And so I
Records.
sent them a cassette
Uh-huh.
and they flew me down there and they booked me at a youth group at the Assembly of God there in Orlando to make sure I could actually sing.
Right.
Yeah.
It
And I
wasn't
was
fake.
legit.
Yeah. It was for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
so they signed me and they had distribution with Benson,
uh-huh.
no,
Okay.
with Columbia at first. So I
Okay.
did 2
Uh-huh.
records with them
Yeah.
and then became friends with Maranatha, the guys at Maranatha, and then
Yeah.
eventually Integrity.
Yeah, so you had a
you
long
know?
stint with them, didn't you? With Maranatha and Integrity.
Yeah, Maranatha, I did a couple records with them and
Okay.
was a staff writer there for a while.
Okay, yep,
And I've had some lifelong friends from both those relationships. You know, me and
Wow.
Don Moen are
yeah,
very close friends. We've been
Yeah.
around the world together, you know, and
Oh,
he's
that's
given me such
incredible.
opportunity because,
Yeah.
you know, during my years at Integrity, my records never sold big numbers.
hmm
And so the bean counters, the accountants,
Yeah,
would they'd have these meetings, you know, they say, okay, what records are we going to release next quarter? You know,
yeah.
and Don would speak up and he said, we're going to do another Lenny record. And they say, no, his last one didn't sell. And he would go back and pull the publishing statements where other people recorded my songs.
Uh-huh.
And one record that was called All My Dreams had a #1 country record on it that Sawyer Brown recorded,
Yeah.
a song I
yeah.
wrote for my wife. So it was #1 record. They made a huge amount of money from that. And he said, look here, what he made y'all.
Yeah.
So he
I
said,
love it.
then he'd bang his fist on the desk. We're doing another Lenny record.
Yes,
I
So
love
he
that.
always
Yeah.
fought for me, you know.
That's
that's
great.
awesome.
Treat her
Yeah.
right was the song, right? That song.
Uh-huh.
That's a great
Yeah.
song. Love it. Love it. Didn't know you wrote that. And they did a great job with it. It just reminds me, isn't it wonderful how God puts the right people in your heart, in your life when you
It's
need
amazing.
to help disciple.
Mhm.
I think of Bill and Gloria Gaither, how many people they have.
Oh gosh.
Oh my gosh, they help Russ Taff.
Taking
with
under
that
their
whole thing.
wing, the whole.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, it's
They've
amazing.
got what a legacy they've built.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure.
And I think Michael
Man.
W is doing that now. I like to think that
Mm-hmm.
there's a place for everybody, even
Yep.
as we all get older, whether we've done radio or music like yourself, there's a place for us. And we talked to a
Yeah.
number of CCM artists, and they're in that intervening time, like, okay, what are we doing with our lives now, Lord?
What purpose does
Mhm.
God have for us now?
Musically, and so,
Right? Mhm.
Yeah.
so you had how long with Integrity and Hosanna, and then did you
Gosh,
do some
11,
other
11 records,
11
nine
records?
or 10
Yeah.
records with him. Yeah.
Mhm.
Wow.
Wow,
Yep.
incredible. And so what's the Lord been doing lately with your life? I know that you've
Well,
you redigitized Falling. I
yep.
saw a video of that with Dawn and another female singer. I'm not sure who it was.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really a good couple
Yeah.
of
And
things.
Don set up a video studio above his garage.
Okay.
So he's got a YouTube channel. It's probably got about 3 million subscribers to it.
Wow,
And
that's
so I've done a few videos of songs with him on that. But
uh-huh.
Mhm.
really about 4 years ago, I sort of took a turn as far as work goes,
hmm
because the music business has pretty much been decimated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
As far
Yeah.
as any kind of income that you can
Right.
make,
Yep.
from, I mean, people ask me, why don't you make another record? I said, well, I could make a record, or I could take a pile of money out in the yard and burn it.
Yeah. That's pretty much.
One or the
I
other.
mean, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's really just almost like a business card. If you got a good selling.
Oh, lost him. What happened there? Let's see if we can get him back.
Yeah.
Hold on here. No, we don't want to
No.
end the meeting. Hold on, folks. See if we can get him back on. It must have hit a button because we're fine here. We may have to do,
Command it.
I don't want to end it, but I'm not going to get him back unless, can you text him real quick?
What a
Yeah,
bummer.
that was a bummer. We'll have to put it together in twos.
Yeah.
Yeah, real quick.
What am I sending?
I gotta
What am I-
end it. Okay.